Hi, this is Dr. David, and welcome back to the Fresh Start Podcast. I'm really, really excited to have you here today. I'm here at work on a Saturday. It is Saturday, March the 4th, 2023, and I'm really just happy to be here. I've got a lot of things I want to share with you about some upcoming podcasts and also just about some insights that I've had. So this will be a shorter podcast. I think this one probably will last maybe about I don't know 30 minutes. So this is going to be a shorter one compared to some others, but I'm going to share a lot of information with you. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Please subscribe. That helps grow the podcast. It helps other people find it. I want you to listen to it, but I also want you to subscribe. Right? I put a lot of time and energy into this. So it just really, really helps the podcast grow. If you subscribe, if you rate it, please give it a 5-star rating, especially if that's how you feel about it. If you have any feedback, you're welcome to email me about it. I provide all of my practice information, but please subscribe. If you feel so compelled, go to the donation page too, the crowdfunding page. You can find that. It's listed on Facebook. I also talk about it here. If you pull up the website for the podcast, it's going to be shown there. But, if you're so compelled, make a donation to this podcast. Right now I use my laptop, which is just an old MacBook Pro. I don't use any special equipment. I don't have any special microphones. Sometimes you might hear a little bit of buzz or fuzz or noise in the background or static. And that's just because I'm not using really professional equipment. But if you want to, if it so moves you to donate to the crowdfunding page, which you can find in any of my Facebook groups, the Grow group, capital GROW, Fresh Start with Dr. David, and the New Balance with Dr. David, any of those Facebook groups, if you join the group or visit the group and scroll down, then there'll be information about the crowdfunding page, and make a donation, make a pledge. I don't care if it's just $1 a month, you know what I mean? Or $10 a month, or whatever you feel so compelled to do. Whatever you give, I promise you, comes back to you. I remember a movie, I need to look it up and watch this movie again, but it was about this kid who I'm sure is a child star now, or an adult star now. I'm sure he's doing movies and all kinds of stuff, but this kid who was talking about the concept of paying it forward, right? Giving back, not just because you want something in return, but just because it's good to do. It's good for everyone. So I would just want to encourage people to do that. I do that. This morning this morning I bought an Egg McMuffin and a breakfast burrito from McDonald's for my ride to work. I wasn't going to eat both, but I was going to eat one and then save the other one for tomorrow. And at one of the intersections where when I get off on my exit, they're frequently homeless people or people are begging, and I just handed my breakfast burrito to one of those individuals, and she was appreciative. I was happy about it. It was a win-win. So if you can give back, whether it's to my organization or to somewhere else. The other thing I'll tell you too is one of the big reasons why I'd love to see more people give back to my organization, to my podcast, is because I'm starting a 501c3. And it's all about resilience and about building resilience, courage, bravery, tenacity, persistence, perseverance, all of those things in teens, adolescents, and young adults. So I'm starting a 501c3. I came up with the concept last year. I created most of the documents for it. I just need to get it incorporated and do all the legal paperwork associated with it. But it's a project to help young adults, teens, and adolescents become stronger, more resilient versions of themselves by giving them life coaching and other techniques to help them to become more resilient and more brave, more courageous, and all those things, right? And it'll be free to them. So I'm really, really excited about that. I will be making a semi-public announcement about it in the future. There will be a website for it and things like that. But please get back to the podcast, because that's going to allow me to help jumpstart that organization. So anyway, please give back whatever you can. I don't care if it's $25 a month or $10 a month or $5 or $1 or whatever. And if you can't locate the place to do that, just let me know. and I'll email it to you, or I'll post it on my public Facebook page. You can also find a lot of stuff about my practice, the podcast and everything on my public Facebook page. So just look up David Wright on Facebook and you should be able to find me. The photo should match the same image that comes up for the podcast if you've been listening in. So anyway, please give back. I really, really appreciate it. And that allows me to give back to my clients, give back to my clients who come in who can't necessarily afford to come see me, and to also start my 501c3. So with that, I'd like to welcome you back. This weather sure has been crazy. I'm not a meteorologist, but this weather is crazy. And it's funny, if you look back at history, at one point, meteorologists didn't know what was going to happen with weather. They saw weather patterns and they could make broad generalizations, but then they started being able to be really, really specific. Well, tomorrow's going to be a 90% chance of rain, things like that, right? But now we've kind of gone backwards because now it seems like they can't predict anything, or the weather's so chaotic that there's so many possibilities that they just don't know. And one day it's 30 degrees and the next day it's 90. It's absolutely insane. And just like I was telling a new client who came in yesterday, and also a current client who's also fairly new who came in yesterday as well, about this concept. When things and forces and elements in your environment talk to you, listen to them, because they're probably telling you something that you need to hear, right? If the universe is talking to you, listen. If your body is talking to you, listen. I have so many clients who come in with an autoimmune condition, and as you may or may not know, they released a report last year that was associated with the correlation of higher cancer rates among African American women, and they noticed a correlation with relaxers and hair products. And so, if your body is telling you something, listen to it, right? If you're having chronic headaches, that's a warning sign from your brain that something is wrong, right? And I could go down a short list of things that are possibilities, right? And none of them have really good outcomes, including things like strokes, right? So listen to your body. Go get it checked out. Go to a doctor. Go to a licensed physician and find out what's going on. And if that person does not offer you a well thought out long-term solution to the problem, whether it's a headache or something else, then come to my office and I'll help you figure it out, and I'll get you to the right person who needs to look at it, whether it's a cardiologist or a neurologist or whatever. But listen to your body, right? If your skin starts breaking out for no reason, it's not for no reason. There's a reason why it's doing that, and it's rejecting something that you're putting in it. I promise you. And so I always say listen to things. And I think the same is true with the weather. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about your body, or you're talking about the people in your immediate circle, or your relatives, or your friends, or what's going on at your office, or your car, or whatever. Pay attention. Observe. Because even with the weather, our planet is telling us something. We just don't want to hear it. We don't want to listen. We're not listening. We're not listening to this planet. We're not listening to people who are hurting. We're not listening. One of the things that I hadn't necessarily thought about bringing this up in this podcast, but I might as well, because I was thinking about it the past couple of days and it just popped in my head again now. But it's this. I've said repeatedly, the purpose of this podcast is not politics. I don't really want to talk about politics, but when politics intersect with psychology or mental health, wellness, healthcare, things like that, self-improvement, I will talk about it. And I'm going to say this, and this isn't just about President Biden, but it's about a lot of different presidents, right? One of the things that I've heard the Biden administration say recently is cite all the job numbers, the low unemployment rate, right? And that's a great thing. We want low unemployment. We want the vast majority of people who are able to work to be working in a productive way that makes them feel fulfilled, happy, hopefully associated with their purpose and their passion, but not always the case. And I know a lot of physicians who aren't happy with what they do. Physicians, attorneys, and people from every spectrum that are just burned out by their supervisor or their boss or their work environment or their employer or whatever. And that's a different topic, which I'll definitely do a whole podcast on. Physician burnout, attorney burnout, employee burnout, worker burnout, all those kind of things. I'll do a whole podcast on burnout. But I wanted to make this observation. They kept citing these numbers, these really, really low numbers for unemployment, 3.5 or 3.8 or, whatever in that neighborhood of percentage of people who are unemployed who should be employed or could be employed. But here's the thing. A lot of people are getting laid off. Google laid off all these people. And if you've tried to use Google Maps lately, I'm sure you've sensed that something's wrong there, right? Google Maps just does not work. And it just hasn't worked for me in about 3 weeks, right? It takes me on these wild, escapades. I don't even use it. I use Waze instead because Waze seems to be working the way that it should. For some reason, Google doesn't. And that's not the only place where Google has issues. Yesterday, I probably got, 3, 4 calls from people looking for mechanics, plumbers, everything else. I don't offer those services. There's something wrong with Google advertising. And I spend a ton of money every month on Google ads. A ton, right? I'm not going to say the number, but it's a lot. It's more than one. It's a car payment. A nice car. I'm not talking about a I'm not talking about a Yugo payment. I'm talking about a BMW payment. It's expensive. I do a lot of advertising because if people, it doesn't matter what you do, how good you are at it. If people don't know about it, it doesn't matter, right? I call it the genius in the wilderness principle. So people have to know about you, but Google ads, I get calls every day from people looking for somebody who is a psychologist in rural Florida, Clearwater, Florida or somewhere, or a mechanic in Logan'sville, Georgia, or I'm paying for these too. When people click on these ads, I'm paying for it. Somebody else is paying for it. So some mechanic who ran an ad, I got the call, but he got charged for it. And I have to assume if somebody else is a mechanic, a plumber, a psychologist, if their calls are coming to me, then my calls are going somewhere else too. It's ridiculous. And this company has so much control over the lives of small business owners who need to use Google to pull in new clients. Who knows what Congress will do about it. There are no regulations really on big tech. So they just do whatever they want. And anyway, that's a whole different thing. But the point was that the planet is telling us something. And whether we listen to it or not is up to us. But the other point that I was making is this. When I brought up the point about the Biden administration, just a number like 3.8% doesn't mean anything. Companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, all these companies and small businesses all across America are laying off people. And supposedly, according to what I've read, those layoffs are going to continue at least until this fall, early fall, September. So people, even if the number stays the same, individual people are losing their jobs. So maybe it's great that the number's 3.5%, but for the person who just got laid off, they don't give a whether the number's 3.5 or 3.8%. So that's the thing about it. And a lot of the jobs that are disappearing, the jobs that are coming in to replace them are lower paying. So a lot of people who've been in their career for a long time are losing their jobs, who've been there for 5, 10, 15 years are losing their jobs. And then new people are entering the workplace. People who are fresh out of high school, people who are fresh out of college, people who are still in college, things like that. And so just looking at the number doesn't tell you anything. It's the context of the number. And that's true about statistics, even statistics about COVID and other things. The number itself tells you nothing. The context of the number is what tells you something, right? If unemployment is 3.5%, that sounds like a good number until you look at the types of jobs that are being lost and the types of jobs that are being gained and the difference in those types of employees, right? It's easy for somebody who's 20, 18, 20, 25, 30, etc. to find a job, a decent paying job. It's different for somebody who's been doing what they've been doing for the last 20, 30 years and who's in their 40s and 50s. I can tell you age discrimination is a real thing. It exists. And people make determinations about that for everything. I know that I sensed that was true when I was applying for residency. After I finished medical school, being an older student, but they absolutely look at things like that. And there's no way to stop age discrimination. You can never prove that somebody didn't hire you because you were too older or older than the composite number or the mean number that they were looking for. You just can't prove it. And they're not going to say it. Uh, you know, so that's a real thing. So the numbers are great. We need statistics, but you have to look at the context of the numbers, and that's the sad thing about science and the use of numbers and statistics is you can use them to show almost anything. And, that brings up the larger concept of this. Sometimes it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. And so whenever you're having a conversation with somebody, whether it's a discussion or a debate or a disagreement or just an honest discourse on some topic, don't just pay attention to what they do say. Pay attention to the things that they should be saying but aren't saying. And that's a concept in law. A lot of times people lie by omission. It's not what they've said is a lie, it's the fact that they've held things to you that if they told you those things, you would have a different thought or a different feeling or come to a different conclusion. And that happens all the time. The government is certainly guilty of doing things like that. You know, so an example of that is if you look at a number like 3.5 or 3.8% unemployment. Well, let's look at the numbers in terms of the income of everybody. Is the income going down? And not only that, but not to mention when you add in inflation, there was a statistic that I heard about, I believe it was late last week. I think it was on CNN. And they were talking about the price of a home. And I've heard some people say, oh, young kids today or people today, they just don't have the same values. Well, here's the thing. Things are more expensive now. Cars are more expensive, especially in terms of how much you earn, right? It used to be the case that the cost of a house was equal to what you earn. But most people don't earn $400,000, right? And they were saying basically that if you adjust for the differences between this time period and say, I don't know, the 70s, 80s, maybe even the 90s, a house today for the average person should be around 80 to 90,000, but it's not. It's 350 to 450,000. And so things have gone up. Housing prices have gone up 5 times, even when you adjust for inflation and time. It's crazy. So, if you take a house, and even, you can go back further than that. If you want to go back to the, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s, where, a house might cost, I don't know, 25 grand, right? And the person made 20 grand and their spouse made 20 grand. So they made 40 grand together. They had a couple of kids and the house was 25. So they actually made more money per year than the cost of the house. Now, that doesn't count taxes, right? But that's far different from what we have now, where you've got a couple making, I don't know, let's say 100 grand or 120 grand and a house costs 400, right? Just think about over time how much more money they're spending on interest and things like that. It's really, really hard to get ahead these days with these prices. And I don't see anybody doing anything about it. You can't count on the Fed. They don't do anything. I think more than anything, they're just a kind of a function of big banks, inflation, all those kind of things, all these rising interest rates. It's just crazy. But anyway, that's something you should think about, right? The numbers, the statistics don't always tell the whole story. What's the context of them, right? And then also, when you're talking about things with people, think about not just what they're saying, but think about the things. Now, what is this person not saying? What are they not talking about? If they're proving this point, X or Y or Z, what else would they be talking about if they were going to prove that point? Well, if they're not talking about that, then why not, right? There's a reason why. It's not by accident. So anyway, let me jump into today. Today's podcast really is about the concept of communication and conversation flow, right? And the reason why I'm doing this is because if you checked in, last Saturday I did a great podcast episode with Melat Tazura. She's a client of mine, and she's been a client of mine for a year and a half, and she's just done phenomenally. She went from not wanting to leave home, not being able to even sit in a car, just a car that's just sitting there, right? She was so crippled with anxiety associated with driving, which she thought was about driving, which turned out to be about other things, right? Which she discovered that connection when she came to my office. But now, a year and a half later, let's see. She's got several promotions at work. She started her own company. She is resilient. She's brave. She's tackling stuff. She's starting to grow. She's becoming more resilient. It's such a transformation. It just blows me away. And like I said during the podcast last week, you need to check it out. I think it's episode 4, and it's on the concept of stability. She wanted to do her podcast on stability. And the funny thing about it is when I brought up the idea to her about doing a podcast, I was going to talk about anxiety because that was the reason why she came to me. Panic attacks and anxiety associated with driving. But she reframed it and she said, I want to do it on stability. And that blew my mind away because instead of looking at herself as a victim of anxiety and panic, she looked at herself as a victor in stability. And I thought that was huge. I learned something from that. That was huge. And so that's one of the great things that I love about what I do is I actually learn as much from my clients as hopefully that they learn from me. So that's one of the things that I love doing what I do. I'm energized about it, and I totally get rewards that are intangible. It's really more about the other things aside from just money. Money is nice, but it's not about that. It really is not about that. And people who are older, who have all the money in the world, will tell you that it's not all about money. So, but anyway, this is kind of an observation. And there's a Facebook group that I have. I've got 2 private Facebook groups. Fresh Start with Dr. David Facebook group. That's the full name of it, actually. Fresh Start with Dr. David Facebook group. Right? It's private, but you can join. You'll get free positive affirmations. And then there's another group called New Balance with Dr. David, which is also a private group. But I also created a public group, and that public group allows you to share the positive affirmations, motivational quotes, and other things. But one of the things that I learned or someone brought up was a post that I shared, and it was about observation. And it was so, I'll just say her name is Linda. And she just has a great soul. You can just sense it a mile away. I first met her when my mom was principal at a school, and I was a kid, and her kids went to the school. And they used to do a cake walk every year, and she would always bring a cake and things like that. But anyway, her name's Linda. Great soul. If you've joined any of my groups, you'll see that she likes a lot of things, and she just has a really, really calming energy, and I like it. So anyway, thanks, Linda. But she brought up I made a comment, which she rarely makes comments about things, and it was about observation, and it was really, really good. But here's the key. All of our sciences, everything we do, from sociology to psychology to anthropology, to chemistry, to biology, to meteorology, every single thing we do is based on observation. Philosophy, all those things, all about observation. So observation is our first and most powerful skill as people. That's why we have a mind, to observe. You learn so much by observation. Well, this podcast is about an observation that I made. So when I did the podcast with Maylot, when I went back, I've listened to it maybe 3 or 4 times. One of the things that I notice is sometimes, and it probably depends on how much coffee I've had, honestly, but sometimes I'll notice that during moments of silence, I'll feel the need to say something, right? To say yes or this or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of people, with my clients, and by observing myself in podcasts, especially podcasts with another guest, that was the first podcast that I had a guest. Most of the others I've done all by myself, although there'll be a lot of upcoming guests. But, I just noticed that. I noticed that during periods of silence, and I think I don't just do that during a podcast. I think I do in other situations. And one of the things that brings up is just the concept of sitting in stillness, right? Most of us don't want to sit in stillness. You get that when you do yoga, and when you do Reiki, and when you do meditation, and when you do hypnosis and things like that. You experience stillness. Or if you listen to that radio host named Delilah, if you get the audible versions of my books, the narration of 2 of my books by this great actress named Annabelle Armour. She narrated Sweet Potato Pie for the Spirit, Soul, and Psyche. She also narrated The Nutrient Diet. Her voice is so calming. Her voice has the ability to just slow things down for you. It's a great power, and it's a testament to a true actress. But that's one of the things that I notice. So sometimes I catch myself slowing myself down or slowing things down. And that brings up the concept of how communication works between people and conversation flow. So, generally speaking, there's a time component of it. Everybody senses the timing of things, right? The rhythm of things. And generally speaking, in a conversation, what you try to do is you try to match your rhythm with theirs. Either you speed up or slow down, or they speed up or slow down. And usually both of you guys are doing the same thing at the same time. And usually after you get to know someone pretty well, you can kind of time it. But it's about timing. And I have an upcoming podcast that I'm going to do about time management, about timetables, about conservation of time, productivity of time, efficiency of time, um, all those kind of things, right? All about time. But communication is all about time. It's all about time. And it's about rhythm and flow. And so, what I would challenge you to do, just so you learn a little bit about yourself and about how you communicate with people, but I promise you it will improve your communication skills with people, and they'll hear better and they'll listen better, and vice versa, is if you actually have a conversation with a friend and record it. Let them know ahead of time. Don't secretly record it. I don't think that's a good idea. But let them know and record it, and then listen back to it and notice what happens during the pauses. Or if you overtalk the other person, or if they overtalk you, listen to it. One of the things that I discovered about myself is it makes me feel uneasy sometimes when there are pauses or moments of silence. But here's the thing, that's a good thing, because that means everybody's getting a chance to process things. And so record a conversation that you have with somebody that you trust or love, and just tell them the reason why you want to do it. You want to improve the conversation. You want to get a sense of the flow. And one of the things that you'll notice is if you're a person who's kind of a type A person like me, who's always on the go, doing a million things, trying to be productive and efficient and perform at a high level and all that kind of stuff, the thing that you need to do as a life lesson is to slow things down. And the funny thing about it is a lot of the techniques that I use in my office are used to slow things down. Hypnosis, NLP, some other techniques, and, and types of therapies that I created in my office to slow things down. Not all of them slow things down, but those things I really, really benefit from. So it just as a learning tool, have a conversation with somebody you trust and love. Let them know you want to record it just so you can listen back and work on your communication skills. And I guarantee you'll learn something about yourself and whether you need to speed things up in terms of your time or slow things down, right? Usually, whatever you do, and some people probably fall right in the middle and they have just the right balance. But most people probably speed things up a little bit too much, or they slow things down a little bit too much. And if that's the case, then what you want to do is the opposite. So anyway, I just wanted to bring up that concept. In terms of communication, look at the rhythm, look at the flow, and be okay with stillness. Learn to be okay with discomfort. Learn to be okay with uncertainty. That's going to help you grow in so many ways. So with that, I'm going to end. I think we've been here for almost 30 minutes now. It's a shorter podcast. But yeah, look at your conversation. Look at the flow. Look at the rhythm. Look at the timing, right? That's why music has such an effect on us, because of the timing, the rhythm, right? So the rhythm of your life, the rhythm of your conversation, the rhythm of your communication makes such a big difference. And if you learn to use that rhythm, depending on who you're conversing with and the context and the subject matter, it's going to really, really benefit you, because you don't use the same tempo and rhythm with everyone. You change based on who you're communicating with, and that's a skill. Yep. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Thank you. Please rate the podcast. Please share it with others. Please check me out on Facebook. Please make a donation to my podcast that's going to go and benefit the podcast, but also the project that I'm starting to help young adults. If you would like to come to my office for more personalized coaching and therapy, please visit my websites, www.mlcoga.com, www.atlantacoaching.com, www.atlantahealthandwellness.com, and www.atlantasmallbusinessincubator.com. And from any one of those websites, if you click in the top right corner, it'll show all of my practices, and all you have to do is look at the bullet points for the one that most matches what you're looking for. Click on it, and it'll take you right to the website. So anyway, happy Saturday. It is March 4th, 2023. Remember, if you can, pay attention to how you communicate with others. Look at the rhythm, look at the flow, and it will really, really change your effectiveness and the level of rapport that you establish with others. So anyway, have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.